So Michelle has asked me to step in today to MC, and so on behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you to our legislative luncheon today. And we have the pleasure of hearing from Rich Studley about the work of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. My name is Gretchen Eiler, and I serve as the treasurer on the Chamber's Board of Directors. On Michelle's script here, I have to go through upcoming events, so I'm going to go through those really quickly. Upcoming events, Tuesday, November 9th, hard to believe it's going to be November. Coffee Club at the Chamber, and the BBC is sharing with us details of the county's new GIS mapping system. On the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, which meets tomorrow, the Chamber Connections Group meets at 8 a.m. Tuesday, December 14th, Coffee Club State of Our Communities, it's at the Chamber. And Wednesday, January 26th, we're going to hold our third annual Women's Leadership event, which will be featuring Melinda Whittington from Raceboy. She's the new CEO. The event was originally scheduled for November of this year, but due to some scheduling conflicts, they had to move it to January. All these events are in the Chamber newsletter pipeline, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call the Chamber or look online. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge Chamber board members that are present. I'm one, and Drew Lindecker, owner of Creative Promotions, is also in attendance. The mission of the Chamber is to promote the growth and success of businesses in Monroe County. We accomplish this by offering programs and services to the business community, such as this opportunity today to hear from Rich Studley and the efforts of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. I want to also acknowledge elected officials that are here today. Paul Baroni, he was here. We'll come back to him. Michael Brown is, Michael's there. All right. Monroe County 1st District Court Judge. William Bruck. William. He is MCC trustee. And Paul. Hi, Paul. Hi. We're acknowledging our elected officials.
Oh,
perfect timing. Bedford Township Supervisor, thank you so much for attending today. Event sponsors today, Allen Chevrolet is a proud sponsor, and John, I'll give you a few seconds, 60 to be precise, to say a few words.
All right. No, I just want to thank everybody for being here. And just reiterate what our goal and our message is. I know if you're here, you believe in the same thing that we believe, that for us to make us stronger, we need to make the community around us stronger, and that we rise by lifting others. So it's just to express that message. Our goal at Allen Chevrolet Cadillac is to make the whole community, Monroe County, great. And we understand that the better that the county's going to be, the better that our business and surrounding businesses will be. So I know it's tough, and we feel it too, especially with everything going on. But continue the good fight and keep investing in the community, and the dividends will pay off. So thank you.
Thanks, John. First Merchants Bank, which I represent, and I work there. I'm market president there, and First Merchants is proud to be part of the Chamber's support of the Chamber of Commerce, and we are also committed to enhancing the community and the well-being of the communities we serve. So, well said, John. Thank you. All right, next, Rich, have you had time to eat? Okay, all right, I want to introduce Rich Studley. We certainly appreciate the long-standing relationship that the Chamber's had with the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, and we really certainly appreciate you, Rich, and we are grateful that you've made time each year to share the Michigan Chamber's legislative update with us in Monroe County. And I understand that Michelle wrote in here that I knew this, that this is probably going to be one of your last rodeos before you retire. So we appreciate all of your service to the community and to the state and the Chamber here. Rich is the Chamber, Michigan Chamber President and Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce since July of 2008, so that's, he's served a long time, been around. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce has 5,000 members and is the largest and most effective state chamber in the country. I'm sure you had something to do with that. So, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and as far as any other thing you want to tell the room about, and it's all yours.
This is a special opportunity for me. Some of you know this, but your Chamber of Commerce was one of the first that I spoke to almost 40 years ago. So I think I had been on the job somewhere between 6 weeks and less than 6 months. It was 1981, early summer, late summer, and maybe going into the fall. We were in the middle of nationally back-to-back recessions. And some of you have been to business or are now part of family businesses will remember that the most popular bumper sticker was, "For the last person leaving Michigan, please turn out the lights." And so I was nervous. I still get nervous before I speak. I think if you aren't a little nervous, you probably shouldn't be speaking or haven't done your homework. But you were all very kind to me. And Michelle has invited me back every year. She left before I started speaking. Now I understand that she has a commitment. But you might be wondering why Michelle invites me back every year. And when she calls, I say, "You're inviting me again?" She says, "Yes. We're going to keep inviting you until you get it right." And so she has become a good friend. You are blessed with a capable and experienced chamber executive, and you're blessed with an extraordinary community. Typically, you send us with people from both sides of the aisle to work with in Lansing, in the State House, and Michigan Senate. Earlier in my career, I was a city manager. I was the administrative assistant to the city manager in Alma. Then I became the city manager in Clare. I really liked city management, and Michelle and I were talking a little bit earlier today that sometimes the most important lessons you learn are hard lessons. And when I was a young, aspiring city manager, I interviewed for the job and was offered the job. I didn't ask until after I had accepted the job. With a 5-member city council, what was the vote to give me the job? It was 3-2. I didn't ask after I accepted the job about the city charter and annual municipal elections, where one city council member, the person who received the lowest number of votes, was up for election or re-election every year. And so I hit the ground running and replaced a wonderful fellow from the community who's been a good city manager for every year, several years, but had led a multi-million-dollar grant for an industrial park pass through our fingertips in Clare because he just forgot to fill out the application. So I remember racing to Harrison to a local office of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their economic development people. We got the grant approved. We built about 5 years of construction projects in 18 months. I was really good at the nuts and bolts of public administration, but not so good on city hall politics. And so I decided to get out of politics, so I left City Hall and went to work for the state legislature. Not one of the most logical decisions I ever made, but it's how I met my wife. It is how I backed into being a chamber professional. I've never met anyone who is a chamber executive or a chamber professional who said, "Gosh, when I was growing up and kids were playing outside and want to be tennis or baseball stars or something else. No one grows up saying, gee whiz, I want to be a chamber executive. When I first started, we had the worst business climate in the country. We had the worst tax climate in the country. We had the worst unemployment and workers' compensation systems in the country. The systems were so bad that they were terribly unfair, both to injured workers or unemployed workers and employers who paid the bill. I share that with you because after 40 years on the job, I spent a few hours the last few days and weeks just looking back. What would I do differently? When I started work at the Michigan Chamber, I knew that we were lobbyists for the business community. I knew that I liked my predecessor, Jim Barrett. I started out as an entry-level rookie lobbyist, and I didn't know what the heck the rest of the people did. I didn't know if other folks were doing the sidewalk sales and Santa Claus parade or throwing turkeys off the roof. What I would share with you about a Chamber of Commerce is that you have a very good one. I don't say that everywhere I travel. Sometimes you visit a community and the hardest thing to think of is something nice to say about the community. The fact that you have business leaders here today with community leaders who are involved in local government is something you should never take for granted. That doesn't happen in some communities. And that's been my experience with Monroe, that you work together to overcome challenges. When chambers of commerce are at our best, we're about diversity and inclusion, bringing together business and community leaders, people from companies, different sizes, different types, from city government, township government, state government, to not just identify problems. Today we have so many people who are good about identifying problems and really good about complaining, not so good at coming up with practical solutions to bring people together. Don't ever lose that. A chamber is never just one person. I've been with the Michigan Chamber for 40 years. I've been more than just a caretaker, but I know that I'm not the owner. It's not my name on the door. This chamber belongs to you. The Michigan Chamber belongs to our members. Today, Michigan Chamber members, and some of you are in the room, employ over 1 million Michigan residents. We continue to be a champion for free enterprise. I guess we're a conservative organization in the sense that we tend to believe in limited government and personal responsibility. We believe in accountability. We have supported tax increases in the past when they were necessary and important to fix the roads or to invest in education. But we think it's also important to hold local government officials accountable, to give them the encouragement and support they need. And one of the great things about local chambers is how often we can be a farm club. Business leaders run for city council or township trustee. Township trustees and county commissioners run for the state house and the Michigan Senate. So please continue to support the business leaders and the community leaders, the government leaders here in Monroe that act with vision and courage. I'm pleased to report that although I'll be retiring at the end of the year, we will continue to be a champion for free enterprise. We will continue to be a partner with the Monroe County Chamber and every other local chamber in the state. We believe in the Chamber Federation. We are an active member of the U.S. Chamber, but they don't tell us what to do, and we don't tell them what to do. Your chamber has been an active member of the Michigan Chamber for years, but we are separate and independent organizations that work together in a spirit of teamwork and cooperation and partnership. So when Michelle said, would you come one last time to speak, I said, yes, please. How soon can I visit with you? I just wanted to say thank you up front for your encouragement and support and your patience and understanding. And there are businesses here today that have hung in there through good years and bad years, through friendly administrations and unfriendly administrations. What have we learned? Good public policy doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes if you want to change the law, you need to change the makeup of the legislature, because often, especially at the state level and the federal level, where there's some distance between elected officials and their constituents, often in state government, the most important decision is who decides. There are people of goodwill in both parties, in both houses, that want to encourage and support job creation and economic development. There are others, because of their background and experience, don't know what it takes to own and operate a business, to meet payroll, to pay taxes, to create jobs, to be successful in delivering products and services in a multi-state region, a national or an international environment. So please know how important you are. If you're a chamber executive, you can't be any stronger or more effective than your board of directors. And it's an honor to speak to several of you today who also serve on the board of the Monroe County Chamber. Thank you for who you are and what you do. I did want to share some good news with you. How many of you would agree that Michigan is different than Maine or Montana or Missouri or Mississippi? Agreed? How many of you would agree that Monroe is different than Muskegon or Menominee? Agreed? Disagree? One of the tough lessons we learned last year as we were fighting COVID at the state level and the outcome was uncertain. I'm sure that when she ran for governor, Gretchen Whitmer imagined that she would face a lot of challenges and tough decisions. None of us could have imagined that she would be confronted with a global pandemic, that you would be confronted with a global pandemic. If there's one thing that chamber members have learned over the past year, it's how to operate safely, how to remain open under difficult circumstances, and protect your employees and your customers. Some of you may recall that last year, when state officials were struggling with when and how to lift some of the harshest restrictions in the country, the Michigan Chamber, in cooperation with local chambers, launched the Reopen Safely campaign to say that we need to reopen, but we need to reopen safely. That manufacturing is different than construction. We have a lot of members in the construction industry. We often work with members of the building construction trades on energy policy and trying to fix transportation infrastructure. A lot of people in the building and construction trades, if you meet them, they're just like small business owners. They've gone to school, learned a trade, they've invested in tools and equipment, and they know that if you're not building, they're not working. And so it's an interesting partnership we have with some of the private sector unions. The challenge was that other nearby states, like Indiana, for example, their governors never closed retail. Their governors never closed manufacturing. In Ohio, the governor never closed manufacturing or construction. Our members in the construction industry, when they heard about social distancing, looked at us and said, please share with the governor. We've been doing social distancing for decades. We don't have construction workers standing shoulder to shoulder in small rooms when we're building or rebuilding businesses. People often work independently. They work outdoors individually or in small teams. And so we're eventually successful in persuading the legislature to encourage the governor and the governor to lift some of the restrictions that were overly harsh or had outlived their usefulness. And so what we realized a couple of months ago is that President Biden had announced rather suddenly that he had decided that he and the U.S. Department of Labor had unilateral authority. The President of the United States must be our Commander-in-Chief and has a lot of power and influence. But the federal government and the state government, our constitutions protect liberty and freedom by having a system of checks and balances based on 3 branches of government, not just one. The executive must be strong and able to move quickly. We also have a legislative branch that writes policy. If you want to write or rewrite the law, run for Congress or the state legislature, not for president or governor. And we also have the judiciary, separate and independent. We were surprised when the president unilaterally decided to impose a nationwide federal OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration standard, a one-size-fits-all, top-down mandate for vaccines and or testing for every state in the country, whether you live and work in Maine or Michigan or Missouri or Montana or Mississippi, for every business in our state, whether you're involved in banking or healthcare or retail or construction. Here in Michigan, we are what's called under federal law a state plan state. That means that we are allowed to administer OSHA. You won't see a federal OSHA inspector very often unless they've been called in by the state or you're experiencing a situation that is very unique and very difficult. The people who do my OSHA inspections here in Michigan are state employees. They work for you. They report to the director of the department and the governor. The federal law requires that when we receive an OSHA standard from the federal government, Michigan's standard must be at least as effective. Words matter. Words matter in statute. And those are the exact words in the federal law, at least as effective. Sometimes in the past, under either Democratic or Republican administrations, bureaucrats have the odd notion that a new federal standard, no matter how comprehensive, how rigorous it is sort of the floor, not the ceiling. It's a jumping off point to do more or to do things differently. What you'll probably see in a few days or a couple of weeks when the White House finishes its deliberations on a nationwide federal vaccine mandate is that they have skipped the traditional rulemaking process at the U.S. Department of Labor. Ordinarily by now, I could stand here and tell you everything that is in the federal OSHA standard, but today I can't because it is still a secret. The White House directed the U.S. Department of Labor to short circuit, to circumvent the traditional OSHA rulemaking process. No one in state government, the governor, Susan Corbin, who directs the Department of Labor, or Sean Egan, the deputy director who administers my OSHA, they cannot tell you today what will be in that standard or will not be in that standard. Every employee and employer in our state has had no opportunity to provide input to the federal government on how the president's standard might be changed to be more efficient and more effective. We're all still waiting for that answer. And so one thing we learned last year and the year before with COVID is that economic uncertainty is a jobs killer. Many of you, whether you're in a small business or medium-sized companies, make decisions every day. Am I going to hire a new employee? Most of us try to only hire the people we need, but to provide new employees with jobs and opportunities, not here today, gone tomorrow, sorry, things didn't work out this month. So we know that you're very cautious about hiring. You're cautious about building. You're cautious about purchasing equipment and machinery or technology. And so we launched 2 weeks ago in cooperation with Michigan Chamber members, the news release that I shared with you, the Listen to My Business, MI as in Michigan. Listen to Michigan businesses. I was asked by a reporter, well, if you had the opportunity to speak with the President of the United States, what would you say? I said, well, first I'd say very little. If I had the privilege to meet with the President of the United States, I would listen and I would be respectful. If I had the opportunity to speak, I would ask politely, but clearly, for the President to please hit the pause button, to reconsider and not cancel his proposed federal standard, but put it through the traditional rulemaking process so that you could read what will be expected of you, so that we could provide input and help make any federal standard better, more practical, more workable, more efficient. So our respectful request to the President of the United States was to please reconsider. When you hear that the federal standard has been announced by the White House, don't be surprised that there's a lot of controversy and there's litigation. It is not at all clear that absent a national emergency, and there's no national emergency in effect, that the President alone would have unilateral authority to issue an emergency OSHA standard that would apply to every employee, every employer, all across the country. Michigan is different than other states. Throughout COVID-19 in Michigan, we've all learned to wake up every day. Those frightening headlines that say there's a new case of COVID. COVID is serious, it is real. At the Michigan Chamber, we are pro-vaccine and anti-mandate. I have again and again and again encouraged family and friends and our members to say, please seriously consider, do your homework, take a look at safe and effective COVID vaccines. But our belief is that there's an element of individual choice here, that what's appropriate for a hospital might be different than a wholesaler or a retailer or a manufacturer or a construction company, and that it is business owners with their employees and their customers who should figure out what the best approach is for each of you. Each of you live and work in completely different businesses, even if you're in the same industry or have the same type of business. So that's why we said, listen to my business, listen to Michigan businesses. At the same time, knowing that whatever is proposed and enacted at the federal level will be implemented by state officials, we also respectfully said to the governor, who appoints Susan Corbin, the director of the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, who appointed Sean Egan to be a deputy director at MIOSHA, we asked this simple question. When a federal standard is announced, Governor, please tell us what direction you will give your department and your employees in that department. Will the state standard be the same as the federal? Will it be at least as effective, or do you plan to propose standards that go farther, that are more stringent? Initially, the governor couldn't or wouldn't answer that question. We persisted on your behalf in a polite manner, but a very determined manner, and I'm pleased to report that just last week, the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity stated clearly that they had no plans, they had no intention to promulgate a standard that would be more stringent than the federal. I share that with you because the coalition of state and local chambers wouldn't exist if it wasn't for business and community leaders like you who support your local chamber, and local chambers like you who work with the state chamber. Together, when the Chamber Federation speaks out on behalf of Michigan's job providers, we can have a powerful and positive impact on good public policy. So I wanted to share that background with you about the Listen to My Business campaign. We'll now have to wait and respond quickly to the federal standard. Whether you're a member of the Michigan Chamber or not, when you have an opportunity to look at the standard that the President seeks to impose on the country, please provide feedback to Michelle. Please provide feedback to us. You're welcome to send me an email at rstudley@michamber.com. I like the standard, wouldn't change a thing. Most of it's okay. I've got problems here, here, and here. We'll be providing updates to Michelle and your local chamber and every local chamber in the state to try to provide as much feedback as quickly as we can. The challenge is failure to comply with a federal standard. A single violation can result in a fine of thousands and thousands of dollars. A single violation can be one incident. It can be one incident on Monday, one incident on Tuesday, one incident on Wednesday, depending on how long it takes for you to remedy the situation. So the state and federal law provide for very heavy fines to be levied quickly, and then you have to appeal and challenge those. So again, as we go forward together, please keep the team at the Michigan Chamber posted on the experience you're having with state officials, especially because we can impact on them. Any questions about the Listen to My Business campaign? I wanted to talk a little bit about another recent development. I wanted to provide a legislative outlook. I don't know that there'll be a lot of legislative action this fall. We're not an organization that measures our accomplishments by the number of new laws that have been signed into effect. Sometimes it's a good day when the legislature meets and they listen and learn. They hold committee meetings and provide oversight. I would share with you that just yesterday we had another positive development in that Governor Whitmer replaced the current director, who was an acting director for almost a year, of the State Unemployment Insurance Agency. Michigan's Unemployment Insurance Agency is an administrative nightmare. It's got to be a horrible place to work if you're a state employee, but it's even worse to interact with them if you're an unemployed worker trying to receive the benefits that you're entitled, or you're an employer seeking to protest an application. They have yet to reopen their offices so that you can talk with a real live person. They are very intentional about the barriers they have erected so that they don't have to interact with real claimants. An independent accounting report from Deloitte showed almost 2 years ago now that when the first director the governor appointed literally shut off the anti-fraud system and was told to shovel money out the door as quickly as you could, they paid hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent claims. That money comes from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, not the state's general fund. Guess who pays UI taxes for the state's Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund? You do. Yes, sir.
If I can comment, our UIA rate quadrupled just the second 2 quarters ago.
That's one of the problems with our system. Ordinarily, it's a good thing that our system in Michigan is experience rated. That means that absent this kind of chronic mismanagement and just opening the floodgates, if you're a company that uses the unemployment insurance system on a regular basis, and that's okay,
We've never laid off an employee.
you'll pay more. But you could be a company that didn't lay anyone off, but had 4 or 5 or 6 fraudulent claims approved before they woke up. The governor accepted the resignation of the first director, Mr. Gray. That's government speak before she fired him for incompetence. The acting director did little over the past year, but yesterday the governor appointed a new full-time director to the State Unemployment Insurance Agency. We're hopeful that she will do a good job, but time will tell. I am encouraged because the governor's public direction to the new director was, and this is almost an exact quote, her directive is, that the new director is to stop waste, fraud, and abuse in the department, and to make sure that people get the benefits they deserve, but that tax dollars are spent wisely. I couldn't have written a better job description for the director of our state unemployment insurance agency other than to protect the integrity of the UI trust fund. So it's there for people who need it, but you're not being charged for benefits that are handed out by anyone who walks by a closed unemployment office and shoves an application under the door. Some of the examples of fraud involve state employees and state contractors, which is especially disturbing. So again, openness, accountability, state and local chambers being a strong voice for business, we can change things for the better. We can move the needle. I did want to share with you that when Ford Motor Company announced a couple of weeks ago that their next major expansion would be in Tennessee and actually Tennessee and Kentucky, there was a lot of discussion in the Capitol building who lost Ford Motor Company. Well, we didn't lose Ford Motor Company. They're still headquartered here in Michigan. their commitment to Michigan remains strong. But if you want to look at a couple of events that will come up over the next few weeks, it will be the debate in Lansing over tax policy. Not tax increases, but tax incentives. Should we return to previous administration, and I say that tax incentives before Rick Snyder was elected governor, where the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, a publicly funded private corporation, is allowed to award individual companies very substantial tax incentives, tax abatements, and previous administrations have used that approach well and poorly. The worst example I can think of industry-specific or company-specific tax breaks would be the incredibly wasteful Hollywood film credit that went to wealthy film producers and actors, most of them living and working either in New York or California. We did not attract those people to live and work in Michigan. Most film jobs are good jobs, but temporary. We were not able to grow, and the MEDC flushed about $300 million down the toilet on the Hollywood film subsidy before they were successful in pulling the plug. We have a series of articles in Crane's Detroit Business. Just Google the discussion about Ford Motor Company. Jeff Donofrio is a friend. He's the current president and CEO of Business Leaders for Michigan, about 100 of the largest corporations in our state and some university presidents. He was Governor Whitmer's former director of the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. He argues that the MEDC needs less oversight from the legislature. I'm not sure I agree with that, especially when it's sort of this quasi-public, semi-private entity. We need openness and accountability and transparency like you have in cities and villages and townships all across Monroe. You can attend a public meeting, watch people make important public policy decisions, and encourage and support them when they do well, and ask questions. Most of the MEDC meetings are not open to the news media or the general public. They're secret. And these non-elected officials will decide to grant or not grant millions and millions of dollars in tax abatements. Can we engage in unilateral disarmament? No. Kentucky and Tennessee won those plans by offering hundreds of millions of dollars in incentives. First and foremost, completely shovel-ready sites, large, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. And the MEDC and others said, gosh, we didn't imagine that that would be needed. I don't know what they were doing, not realizing that if you're going to build the next generation vehicles or electric vehicles, that you would need large facilities with rail sidings, with good roads, with water and sewer and streets. There are a lot of great industrial developers that have smaller sites available. But if we're going to compete for these mega sites, we're going to have to get our act together. There are other people, Dick DeVos and Matt Hayworth. Matt's a friend of ours at the Michigan Chamber. I've known Dick DeVos for many years. They argue no, that corporate welfare is bad. That what we need is to do the basics, have better education, better infrastructure, better schools, let people compete, level playing field. My guess is that the best approach for Michigan might be somewhere in between. We cannot engage in unilateral disarmament. Other states are willing to write a check for $300 or $400 million to get businesses in Michigan to move to other states. On the other hand, the track record of government bureaucrats picking winners and losers isn't very good. And so I think we need the middle ground. One of the other articles is from State Senator Ken Horn. He's an incumbent state senator, a good friend of the business community. He argues we need to carefully reestablish some of these tax incentives that have a track record of being successful. But we have to monitor the cost. One of the problems when Governor Granholm gave away literally billions of dollars in tax revenue is there was no public input, no public oversight, and it took several years for the legislature to figure out that the governor had given away billions of dollars in revenue that would accrue during a future administration. So remember that one thing politicians, especially at the state and federal level, like is a ribbon cutting ceremony or a groundbreaking ceremony. I promise to grant this will create 100 jobs, and then you find out a year or two later after they're out of office that the jobs did occur or they didn't occur. That's a big debate about tax policy that needs to be on your radar screen. Here's the other challenge we face. Ken Orr is also a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. The House and the Senate and the governor just agreed on billions and billions and billions of dollars in additional spending. The current state budget, the one that starts on October 1st, is the single largest state budget in the history of the state of Michigan. And there are still billions and billions of dollars of one-time state revenue or unanticipated federal revenue that have yet to be spent. Thankfully, I'll be retiring on December 31st, so I will be able to watch from the sidelines and cheer you on. But here's where we're heading in terms of tax policy. And this is about to happen at the federal level. The budget was just approved is not sustainable. New programs have been created, existing programs have been expanded with billions of dollars of one-time revenue. This will last probably 1 or 2 years, but 2 or 3 years from now, there will be a 10-round championship fight in Lansing between taxpayers and tax spenders to see whether these programs have received a big increase in temporary one-time funding are pared back. There's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary government program, or are taxes increased. Depending on who controls the State House and the Michigan Senate, who is our governor, who is our lieutenant governor, who is attorney general, or secretary of state, people of goodwill can disagree about tax policy, but state government has to have a balanced budget. So the question of who pays, when lawmakers who voted for this budget, who are still there in Lansing, are confronted with the reality of what they've done, many of them will lean first to tax increases. Tax increases on the wealthy. Tax increases on people who make $400,000 a year, which is really a tax increase on people who make $200,000 a year. Tax increases on those millionaires who own small businesses and medium-sized companies. And so we should be prepared as a business community for a real battle about the size and the cost and the efficiency of state government. That's why it's so important for you to encourage and support your people on both sides of the aisle to run for office, who will listen and learn and focus on good public policy. We're about 2 years out from our history over taxes and spending. We are 377 days away from the November 2022 general election. The governor is up for re-election. I wanted to provide you with an overview or outlook. This may seem kind of odd, but you don't have to be a political junkie to follow the next Tuesday's election for governor in Virginia. The incumbent Democratic governor, Mr. McAuliffe, early in the campaign was 26 points ahead of any challenger. Poll after poll after poll has now shown in this bellwether poll that the race is close. And so one election can only signal a trend or an event in that state, but the national news media will go crazy either way. Just take it as a sneak preview of things to come. One of the things that was interesting about that race is that Governor Whitmer was scheduled to go door to door for Governor McAuliffe this past weekend, and she canceled on short notice. It could be that her pollsters have said he's going to win anyways. You're taking some criticism for not being in Benton Harbor. Skip it. It's just as likely that her pollsters said Governor McAuliffe is a dead man walking. And you don't want to be campaigning for someone who's going to lose, because losing campaigns tend to rub off on people that are involved. So Governor Whitmer had reported earlier this week that she has raised over $12 million for her reelection campaign. She'll have another 5 or 7 or 9 or $10 million if she needs it. She will be very hard to beat. There are multiple Republican candidates running for governor. I encourage you to get to know some of them. Chief Craig, retired police chief from Detroit, spoke to the Michigan Chamber's Board of Directors. It was interesting, it was informative. It's unclear whether he's really the front runner. His background and experience in law enforcement is impressive, but in Michigan we expect our governors to be very knowledgeable about state government, not just one department or one area. And he broaden his base of support, and he speak to a wide range of issues that people in Monroe and Muskegon and Menominee care about. Too soon to tell. I think right now, if you look at the challengers to Attorney General Dana Nessel, who in some ways is the most radical, the most controversial, the most uneven state officer we have, she should be vulnerable. She's probably not. The only person that has a good shot at beating her would be the former Speaker of the House who ran when the seat was open. Watch the Republican Party as they work through nominating people who can win in August and November, or just making the party base happy for people who can win in August primary, but don't have the opportunity to reach out to independent voters in our state where these elections are decided. I think right now, it's likely that Republicans may or may not field a viable candidate for Secretary of State. Jocelyn Benson has been more careful and more moderate in her handling of the Secretary of State's office. She's playing the long game. My personal, I emphasize personal, early prediction is if I had to guess today, the incumbent Secretary of State will probably be reelected. The Attorney General and the Governor may or may not face serious challenges. It's too soon to tell. It will probably be 3 or 4 months before those campaigns are sorted out. You may have heard of the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Voters approved the longest and most detailed and complicated amendment to the state constitution. My thought for you there is on the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. The idea that you can take the politics out of an inherently political process like drawing district boundaries was kind of silly to begin with. Some of the members of the commission are independent, others are not. Right now, they have had poor attendance. They're all paid over $45,000 a year. Some of them don't attend at all. Some attend occasionally. They're behind schedule. The harshest critics of the maps they've drawn so far are the people who thought this independent commission was a good idea. So I'm reminded of that old saying, be careful what you wish for. There are serious problems with the Federal Voting Rights Act and our state's obligation to have a minimum number of minority districts. Most of us would say, what's a majority? 50% plus 1. They were given questionable advice by their counsel that 40% is a majority. And so I think you're likely to see multiple lawsuits brought against the congressional redistricting plan especially, but for the State House and the Michigan Senate, because especially in the Detroit area, a couple of other urban areas, it would reduce the number of elected officials who are people of color. And that's a whole separate series of legal challenges that I think the proponents never imagined they would face. So hopefully you'll have new maps, you'll have to study them carefully. A lot of incumbents are going to be put together in the same district, whether it's for Congress or the State House or the Michigan Senate. Your vote still matters. Good candidates still matter. If I had to guess, I think we will continue to have business-friendly majorities in both the State House and the Michigan Senate, and maybe smaller. But I think that is one very likely scenario. So with that, a legislative update on some key issues, some tips on what to look for and how to keep track. And I would be glad to stay after this visit to talk with any of you as long as you'd like. I know that you're all very busy. And again, I would just share on a personal level my heartfelt thanks for your friendship and your encouragement over 40 years. I'm looking forward to retirement. I'm going to do some teaching, spend a lot more time riding my motorcycle and fishing. And I leave the way the great Tiger broadcaster Ernie Harwell said at the end of his career, I don't like goodbyes. Goodbyes are sad. So I will say hello to a new adventure, and I hope to see you again soon. God bless you.
Anyone have questions they'd like to ask?
Yes, sir.
Sure, I have a question. One comment on UIA, we were told we wouldn't see rate increases because nothing would be charged to us, and then it was. So that's, I don't know how the chamber is dealing with that with the state. But my question is, you said there could be litigation if this mandate federally is put in. Is the National Chamber prepared or preparing for litigation? I mean, can you speak to that as far as these mandates via OSHA?
The U.S. Chamber is not shy about going to court when it's necessary and important. I think they've been prudent to not threaten that or make that decision yet. The first round of lawsuits are most likely to be filed by governors in various states. Some are state plan states, some are under the federal law, and there will be a very strong legal challenge on the factual basis that there's simply no clear statutory basis in the federal OSHA law for the president to unilaterally impose a nationwide emergency standard, especially without going through the traditional rule process. So he said it's an emergency rule and then didn't use the emergency rule process. It's not hard to imagine that a federal circuit court judge or court of appeals might say we're not going to rule on whether the president can or can't do this, but we are ordering the U.S. Department of Labor to go through the rules process, which would delay it months and give us a lot more sunshine and accountability. Several incumbent governors have said they're going to sue anyways. One of the things that's interesting about Michigan is even when COVID was at its worst, the private sector workplace was never a significant source of COVID outbreaks. Manufacturing, no. Construction, no. Retail, no. Professional services, no. Even hotels and restaurants, the hospitality industry, were shut down so quickly. For months and months and months now in Michigan, the single largest category of COVID outbreaks have been among residents of senior citizen or assisted living homes, the elderly, who are more vulnerable to COVID even if they've had shots, and young people doing what young people do, which is to get together after a day at school and have fun. Or, interestingly enough, a lot of outbreaks are still related to family events, a wedding, a reunion, a family picnic, those kinds of things. The workplace, and I think that's another area where they're vulnerable to a legal challenge, is the burden of this federal mandate will fall on employers who are not responsible for the problem. And that's another whole round of arguments about this. Some people think the president knows he doesn't have the authority. I just felt like he needed to say this and do this. Some large employers welcomed it first. The president's announcement, the feedback we're getting from some of the larger employers now, Delta Airlines would be a good example. Their CEO looked at this and said, no, we'll work with our employees. They're at over 90% vaccinated now, and they haven't fired any. Other employers, healthcare is a good example. I think it's a reflection of how different businesses are different. If you're running a hospital, I can see where you want everyone who works in the hospital to be vaccinated. But still, it's a very different situation when you're talking about individual rights and asking someone to put something into their body that they believe might be harmful or not effective. I think you'll see those kind of individual lawsuits probably as well. Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
With respect to electricity, I know there's a lot of discussion recently about the Ford transfer of the plant down there, but also energy costs and that sort of thing. I know there's been a recent Senate bill introduced, and just curious on position on that.
When Ford Motor Company announced their plan to build plants out of state, there were a host of reasons given, and some of the earlier media reports said that it was because our industrial electric rates are not competitive. As that story evolved, clearly the bigger problem was we just didn't have shovel-ready sites. Not even shovel-ready, they've been shoveled, they're ready. As in, come on down, we'll move you. It looks like the primary reason was that we didn't make the first cut. We didn't have giant sites of hundreds and hundreds of acres that were ready. And then I think you look at other factors: labor law, tax policy, energy. At DTE and Consumers, the two largest investor-owned utilities in the state, they said we can be competitive, and we do have flexibility under current law to offer rates that are different for consistently large industrial users. I was also informed by our team and another member that under current law, if you are Giant Manufacturing Incorporated and you decide that you could lower your cost of electricity tomorrow by building generation capacity on site, there's nothing to prevent you from doing it. And so I think the challenge is, and one of the principles we fought for in 2016 and 2018 was cost of service rates. In the past, it was not uncommon here in Michigan for business customers to subsidize residential. We stopped that years ago. So the principle that we stand on today and stood on in the last debate is cost of service rates. Within each category, agriculture shouldn't subsidize homeowners, homeowners shouldn't subsidize business, industrial shouldn't subsidize retail. Within those broad categories, you want cost of service rates. Like any other business, the more you purchase of a commodity, the more likely you are to get a good price, but you have to be a reliable customer. And so we have said to several of our members, don't change the law, don't move away from cost of service rates, but sit down, utility company, and sit down, giant energy intensive manufacturer. Ironically, some of the new alternative vehicle and electric vehicle manufacturing processes are extremely energy intensive, and we use massive amounts of energy. The other problem we have is here in Michigan, we're constricted because we're a peninsula state with distribution. We've also been busily shutting down the last of the coal-fired plants, and at the same time, the governor and the president have done everything they can to drive up the cost of safe, reliable, affordable natural gas. The president canceled construction of the Exxon pipeline in the west. Governor Whitmer wants to halt immediately, as in tomorrow, and shut down Line 5 with no alternative. And so increasingly businesses are looking to propane in the UP or natural gas, and a lot of the smaller power plants that have been built are smaller peaker plants that will come on and off as demand replies, and most of those newer plants are smaller and are fueled by natural gas. The other problem I think we have as a state is kind of a mixed approach to nuclear energy. DTE continues to have major nuclear power plant in the southwest. They've been shut down. Indiana Electric has said they're not building any more electric plants to serve Illinois or Michigan. They're going to keep their electricity there. So it's a very tough issue. We're looking at those bills. I think the bills as introduced raise a lot of questions about cost of service rates. And some people want to be able to shop for electricity when it's inexpensive, but if it's expensive, they want to be able to go back to the utility company on short notice. I would say it was like if I decided to lease a Ford vehicle, and then I decided the lease was too expensive, and so I would go to you as a Chevy dealer and say, buy out my Ford lease and sell me a car at the same price. The utility companies have a point when they say, if we're going to invest hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in power plants, we kind of need to know who our customers are going to be, not just next week or next month or next year. But I think there are ways to resolve these, but I'd be surprised if that bill moved. I think it would be reintroduced next year. It's kind of late in the year for a really important, complicated issue like that to move. We're in the process of meeting with utility companies and major industrial users. We're very member-driven. We'll probably go to our Energy Policy Committee. Any of you who are members of the Michigan Chamber are welcome to participate on our policy advisory committees. I think that issue will probably be in our legislative priorities for the next session. Where do we go? What do we do? Sometimes bills get introduced late in the game, kind of stake out positions, and to go through some committee meetings and public hearings. A lot of what would happen on that bill will change depending on who controls the State House or Michigan Senate. Sorry, that's a really important issue. That's one of those to watch, even if you're a smaller utility customer.
Thank you. We are running a little bit, so I want to.
Sorry.
No. You will be here. I know you haven't finished your lunch yet, but Rich, thank you so much for your leadership at the State Michigan Chamber. You are not listening. The knowledge of just what you're sharing with our community.
I hope next year we'll invite Jim Holcomb, who will be the next president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber, to come here and listen and learn. I always take as much insight back as I hope to share with you in these visits. So again, thank you so much. Bye now.
I was in not acknowledging our third sponsor, Beaumont, Jeffrey Ciccone. Am I saying that correctly? Okay. You want to say just a few things before, stand up,
Well,
so everybody can see who you are.
Well, I'm not going to stand, well, I'm literally standing between you guys and the door, but hopefully not figuratively. I just want to say I know this is still a challenging time for all of us, and so Beaumont is really trying to dig in and be supportive of our chamber partners because we know the value that they bring back to the community. So this year is the first year I think we've been the Legislative Luncheon Series sponsor, so we're really trying to dig in and be